Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the GEET seminar. A longtime proponent of global cleanliness and an energy and efficient environment, and a proponent of excellent gas mileage and clean cars with saving the planet, Paul Pantone has spent a lot of years and his own personal time and blood working toward something that we all would love to see, not just in our lives, but that if we were able to spread this all over the planet, would be a tremendously beneficial thing for everyone. Paul has recently, we've had the glorious honor and pleasure of celebrating the fact that he has been released from involuntary vacation or custody. He was wrongfully incarcerated for over 5 years by forces that believed that he was a personal, true, and clear and present danger and threat to their existence. Now, there's a lot of names you can put on that, and among those, there's some oil conglomerates and some energy conglomerates. There's quite a few people. It's truly a shame, with all the benefit that Paul has to offer for this community and the world, that so many people felt so badly threatened that they had to marginalize him, or they tried to. Now, thankfully, by the work of many fine and honorable saints and co-laborers, many of them here, that through the collective group efforts, Paul his stay at the Club Med or Club Fed was shortened. He's back out. He's been breathing free air now for about 3 months. But at this time, I would like you to consider that they thought he was a threat. Everyone else will think they're a threat. If you can make a difference too, if you're helping moving the ball for yardage on this gridiron, the other team is not going to be sitting in the end zone sucking on a lemonade cooler, laying in a chaise lounge chair. They're going to be after you and you and you. So as part of this, just note that, if you're making a difference, the other folks aren't going to be pleased with you. And the more difference you're making, the more unpleasant the opposition is going to get. Paul, they incarcerated him under the precept that he was paranoid delusional. He was delusional because he believed he could run an internal combustion engine on either part or mostly water, which is kind of a strange thing. And they believed he was paranoid because he said somebody was trying to take it away from him. It's like that elderly couple that gets up for breakfast and they're sitting down to dinner and the phone rings and the wife gets up and walks over the phone. She says, "Hello? Yes, okay, thank you." And hangs up, comes back and sits down at dinner, and husband says, "Who was that, honey?" "Well, that was the doctor with the results of your psych eval. There's some good news and some bad news." He goes, "Really? What's the good news?" "Well, you're not paranoid delusional. You're not paranoid schizophrenic." "Really? What's the bad news?" "The whole world is out to get you." So with that, without any further gilding of the lily, I'd like to introduce you to a very honorable man that is trying to do an excellent work for the environment, our country, and the world. Please raise a warm welcome for Paul Pantone.
Gee, I didn't know, should I come out here with a cape, with a big letter on my shirt, or a sword or something? I mean, oh, my mic's not on?
There it is.
Oh. Okay. Turn it? How's that?
It's on now.
Oh, it's on. Okay. Thank you, John. That was a good build up there. For many of you who have known me for years, I've never been happy with the way anything is. I always want to try to make it a little better and a little better. No matter how good I do it, I always think, oh, I could have done a lot better than that. The other day, some of you heard me give my presentation, and at the end of it, I was thinking, oh, I've done a lot better than that. And then I walk out of here and everybody's going, boy, that was the best one I've heard yet. And it was, really? Okay. Years ago, I went out and split firewood for a living. I don't know if any of you have ever had to swing a maul. It's a hard job. But that night I went home and I took my gun, which was a 25 caliber stud gun, out of the garage that I used to shoot nails into concrete, and I built a little wedge on the end of it. Oh, we're not on this one. This product. There we go. And a few years later, I went ahead and patented a 30-shot semi-automatic log splitter. One of the manufacturers that came in that was interested in working with me, they saw what I was doing and said, you know what, this is good for something else. We're going to call it a bolt buster. It opens doors for firemen and policemen when they're in a hurry, and SWAT teams just go boom and that door opens up. Never did see a dime off it or even a thank you, but the same guy who signed non-compete agreements saying he'd never tell anybody about the log splitter, he didn't. When people would tell me about other problems, I met one gentleman, he worked for an insurance company in California, and he said the biggest single claim they had was people putting in carpets, knee injuries, kicking the carpets in. So I looked at the way they were doing it, and I said, well, why don't you just invent this little arm that'll just reach over the tack strip and pull like this, and it'll pull the carpet in. And I built him one. And they said, well, the liability insurance on that, if somebody hurts their arm pulling it, wouldn't make it worth marketing. So I got away from that one. A few years later, I'm watching them install a meter on my house, an electric meter, and they go up to the meter and they hold it up like this and drive it in with their hand. And they end up with hand injuries. And occasionally, we get to pay their early retirement because they injure their hand, they get electrocuted, whatever their problem is. Oh, this isn't on again, okay.
No. Just press that.
Oh, I have to keep pressing that? Oh, okay. But the little meter tool I invented, when I saw a problem and I thought I could solve it, I made several. I made this one, I made another one out of a pair of vice grips that had two round horseshoe shapes that'd hold the meter. You just pull the handle, pops it into place. Nobody was interested in manufacturing and distributing it. I wasn't interested in doing it myself because it wasn't a big enough market. It would only make $2 or $3 million a year, and my time at that time was starting on GEET. I wanted to do something that would help mankind, and a meter tool wasn't that. I wanted to invent something that would give us better mileage. I began building GEETs 1979. By 1983, I had my first working model, which is similar to this, and that particular model kept me busy. But when I wasn't doing that, I was doing what I enjoyed the most, and that was building houses, and decorating, and did all kinds of really fun things. I built my own fireplaces in the houses. I like atrium areas. That to me was being creative, taking something that looks horrible and making it look good. I started working on the engines and getting more and more into demonstrating the engines and the technology. 1983, 84. Finally, in late 84, I went forward with a newspaper. We did an article, and I thought it was great. I mean, here, a newspaper finally takes it serious. They're going to come out, put it on front page, and I made front page. Within 2 days, I had calls from all over, people warning me of their uncles and brothers and cousins and all that were working on projects like this, or they had another relative working on a project like this, and they vanished. Well, all my life, I was looking for the other inventors that I kept hearing about. When I was real small, I remember hearing about a guy in Santa Monica who was extracting hydrogen from water and bottling it up, and he was going to sell this and make billions of dollars putting up hydrogen stations instead of gas stations. Finally, I got the money together and went down to where he was at. The only thing left were the remains of a building. That kept happening for years. Or you go to the building and they say, I'm sorry, but he was here, he vanished one night. One of the gentlemen that said he was interested in building my log splitter and the power tools that I'd invented, construction equipment, he said, bring it over, I got machine shops, I got welding equipment, I want to work with you. Well, I made the mistake, after he told me what he wanted to manufacture, I showed up with a GEET. And I pull up to his shop, and I'm really impressed. It's a Chevron station out front, and there's about 14 bays behind it. I walk in, and there is equipment everywhere. I'm going, yeah, this guy can build anything I want. He's got race cars, I mean, he's got toys. This is the place I need. So he comes out to introduce himself, and I said, I got more toys in the car. He said, well, let's go look. So I pull the back door of my station wagon open, I pull out the GEET engine, and I said, now this is an engine that'll run on anything. And all of a sudden I see this 350-pound man who's about 6'8", backing up, get off my property, get off my property. No, what do you mean? He said, they'll kill me. If I even talk to you about this, they'll kill me. Get off my property. And he goes in the door and he hollers for all his mechanics to drop what they're doing and carry me off the property and make sure the car's out in the street. And they carried me off the property, dropped me in the street. One of the guys drove my car out and he said, "Don't ever come back." I said, "What was that all about?" He said, "Well, his brother died after they invented a carburetor that worked and they put it on a racetrack. His brother was going to market it." I'm a little bit hard-headed. And when people tell me they were threatened and they're harassed, my attitude's always been I'm 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and no, I'm not paranoid. Much. Would have been a lot better with red, but that's all right. Thank you.
Funny guy.
Had to have a little humor in here. Wouldn't let me wear that red cape.
Did you ever patent the tinfoil hat?
No. Okay, are we working here again? Right there. In Las Vegas, the United Nations co-sponsored an energy conference for clean air, less pollution, and they invited me to come down. That was back in 1996, I believe it was, or 95. And we have some Polaroid pictures here. They're not too clear, but we'll have them up here on the stage later. These guys came up. There was BAT, Battery Automated Transportation. There was all these other companies that had great oils and different products. Nothing there that could get a 10% or 20% increase in mileage, except ours. Nothing there that could really do anything for all of mankind. They might be able to help this person or this person a little bit. After the second day of demonstrations, Wednesday, it was a Monday through Friday event. On Wednesday, it was my turn. And this was really an international event. I got up, they had me wired for sound, and everybody in the audience had their own earphones so that they could hear it in their own language. It was being simultaneously translated to 6 or 7 different languages. Well, I got up there and I figured all these people have been sitting on their bottoms all this time. They'd like to get up and move around a little. So I said, rather than bore you all with what I can do, let's go out to the parking lot. We've got cars, we've got generators, we've got other engines. Get up, walk around, bring pop, whatever you want to bring to pour in the fuel tank, coffee, some sugar, whatever. And we went up and we entertained the group for about 3 hours. The Russians kept pointing at me going, "Back to the future. Emmett Brown, yeah." Well, it was a lot of fun. We cruised around the parking lot a little sideways at times until the security from the Monte Carlo came up and said, "That's a no-no. No burning rubber." So we stopped the demonstrations, went back inside, and to my amazement, that place was half empty. All these booths were empty. And I went back out and I'm looking around to find out what happened, and the sign on the front door that said $100,000 first prize had been removed. MIT was there, and they were in that picture. And some of their people later on made the news in 1999 when they said they invented a plasmatron, a plasma generator.
You got it?
Yeah, that's fine. No more. We're going to go to the pictures in just a few minutes. Oh, I didn't get that back in the book. But MIT was there and other people were there. The United Nations people came up. The best offer we had at that time to take the technology to market was $100,000, and it might someday in the future make it to the market. They all said I was 50 to 100 years ahead of mankind the way things are going. I've had this problem every time I've gone to a research lab like Sandia Laboratory in California, in Livermore. When I went into their laboratory, they showed me their state-of-the-art equipment. And I walked in, I said, "You got to be kidding me. You spent $30 million on this room so you can do all this photography work on an engine that's 50, 60 years old technology. I've got a device sitting out in the car that I can put pickle juice in if I want, and it's going to run and have no pollution." And he said, "Yeah, but that's not it. You're not paying the wages for all these government employees. We're not going to study that. We're not going to admit it works. You are never going to get to first base. We won't let you." So that's when I decided I've got to reach out and try to get to the people. And that's what today is all about. I have decided, with the help of my son and John and many other people in this room right now, Mr. Fiala, once I got out, I wanted to get it out to the people as quickly as possible. So we put the plans up on the internet last week, and we announced it on Coast to Coast that the plans for your personal use, not for commercial application, you can put one for every family, they can have a set of plans. That's my license for me, my son, and my group of people. Everybody can build one. The plans are up there, enjoy it. Many people believe they can already build it. They're not going to call me or want to get a hold of me for help. They're just going to go ahead and try. The set of plans, let me grab them real quick.
Yeah, you got it.
The set of plans, I have not been selling them for years, but Steve has been here with the TeslaTech group, and he's put it together as 3 neat little packages with information in it on how to put it all together. Those he was selling for the longest time for $250 a set. Right now, if you get them from him, they're $150, but that does include my assistance or someone's assistance within the company responding to your email if you have questions. The plans on the internet for free went out to about 1.8 million people that got to view them in the last week. No, I'm not answering questions from all those people. I can't. So if you bought a license, then I'm going to go ahead and continue honoring those licenses. For those of you who want more knowledge than that, I'm having 4 more classes in the United States. Those 4 classes are the 3rd week of August and September, and the 2nd weeks of November and October. And that's it. The only reason I'm having just the 4 classes is we're going to videotape that from every direction we can. We're going to get all the questions we can get it all on tape. I want to know everything you can ask me in those 4 weeks. So the 4 groups of students coming in are going to be the best we can come up with to put it together as a video school. People in the future don't have to buy the whole school. They're going to be able to say, I just want to learn about the rod. I just want to learn about the vaporization, or I just want to learn about how to mount it to the car. How do I build the exhaust part of it? We want that to be available. You won't have to go to the whole school for it. You can do it at home, or you can take the whole course at home. It'll be somewhere between 30 and 50 hours. I don't know yet. We're not going to be going out on the tours like this. I've had a lot of places call just in the last few days. Can you come here? Can you come here? We're going to be doing a show. We'd love to have you. My doors are closed. This was the last presentation. Now I'm going to be doing everything from home, from the studio, and I'm putting it together so that I can reach millions of people instead of just a small handful of people. Steve has always been there to get me to these conferences. He started me going to these things 15, 18 years ago. I've enjoyed it. Once a year, it's great to get together with friends and show them the newest things that I've done. But since I've been out of commission for 3.5 years, and I mean out of commission, even getting up here today to walk and be on the stage is a little bit painful. I had to go get, my brother just went and got me a brace so I could wear the brace. I have not had a family time. My life has been on the road for most of the last 15 years, demonstrating and demonstrating and demonstrating. Before I got out of the hospital, and I'm still declared mentally incompetent now. So I can get away with whatever I want. Can't be held responsible. While I toured this country, it was great. We had a lot of fun. But at the same time, it was only a few people here and a few people there. The internet has opened the door so that we have hundreds of generators and tractors running over in France. While I was in the hospital, I got 1 hour a month sometimes to go down and look at the internet. And I'd be up there looking at it. Wow, look at this, a helicopter with my technology. Gee, I'm glad I knew about this. And how about this one here? This guy's got an assembly line in his barn. He's got about 20 people lined up building the parts. They're all over the world. I don't know how many of you have seen Paul Muller in his flying car. He's been on all kinds of television shows. But one of the articles I got when I was looking for Skycar to see if he ever did anything after he signed a contract with me, I pull it up and here's this great article in Europe saying he raised $800 million once he switched the engines to run on the Pantone GEET fuel system. Yeah. I had to find the contract before I go see him. We found the contract. There's a whole bunch of these people. They forgot they wrote contracts. Conveniently. But during one of the conversations, we said, hey, guy, you know, Paul's on the line too. Do you think there's any way you can help us with, you know, 15, 20, 30,000 bucks to help get him out? Otherwise, he may not get out. Well, he's looking at a contract going, he isn't going to get out, huh? No, I can't help. That's okay. I've met some new people. They happen to be attorneys. They're in California. They'd love to go visit him. So we're going to have him a nice luncheon meeting or something here in the near future. But multiply that times hundreds of people, many of them who worked for me. Now, if you look at all the YouTube videos from the past, and a lot of the videos that Steve has right here, a lot of the people that said the GEET didn't work were the very people that stood next to me, that worked for me, or were under contract to market the company, the technology, while I was out touring. When they heard that I was turning down the possibility, not an offer, but the possibility of getting large money, they got very upset with me. One such situation occurred in Utah when the Prince of Kuwait came to my home. I was told he was coming. They said there'd be certain conditions. They wanted to check my house, make sure it was safe. And now I know what paranoia is with that guy. But he pulls up with the limo, and these guys jump out with little Uzis. That's when I started feeling a little uncomfortable. What are you here for? But they searched the house, the broom closets. They made sure there was no one in the house to endanger the prince. He came in, and we had an engine just like this, filled it with some crude oil, picked it up, and I blew that little towel all over his head. I mean, it just, and he kept sniffing the air, waiting for something. Just clean, fresh air. After about 10 or 15 minutes, we put some Pepsi in it, did it again. He tried the Pepsi. He knew it was real. And after a few more minutes, he said, shut it off. He explained to his translator to make this offer to me. And the translator looked very nervous. And he looked over at me and he said, Your Highness would like to know if you would accept $3 billion. I said, well, no, I'm not for sale. This is going to help mankind. Now, in my opinion, that wasn't an offer. He was just asking, would I? He could have negotiated way down saying, well, instead of 3, here's 1. But I'm not for sale, so I just came out and said, no, thank you. Instead, he got up, said a prayer to Allah, that I would take my time getting this to the marketplace and that nothing would happen to me or the technology that might advance it to the point where I do the same thing with the water plans that I just did with the big engine plans. Because if I were to go out on the internet right now and say, here's how to run your car on water, that would hurt them. So he asked Allah to put rose petals before me so I wouldn't fall and hurt myself. My employees became so infuriated with that. They wanted me shut down. They were going to do everything in their power to cause me to collapse. They had the company so bad condition-wise financially that it should have filed bankruptcy on January 1st, 2000. I had gotten wind from an Australian gentleman who was supposed to have sent a $250,000 deposit in for a license, and the money didn't arrive. I called him up and he said, well, your guys are sabotaging you right now, and they said you're going bankrupt. So why would I want to hand you a $250,000 so you can go bankrupt in 2 weeks? What are you talking about? So he sent me the copy of all these emails. I then got a hold of all the other people worldwide that had bailed out in the last 30 days. They all had received these same emails. My own employees and people I had trusted. And they'd gone out and sabotaged everything we had going. Sorry about that. I had to go in and ask everybody for their immediate resignation and leave. It's pretty bad when the people standing beside you that you trust are the ones stabbing you in the back. And you've handed out your trust so many times to people with licenses to put it on 1 car and they put it on 20. Or run the company and you can have 25, 30% of the profit bonus. They don't want that. They want the billions. I don't want to work for it. I just want my big cut. Well, what about mankind? Ah, to hell with mankind. And when I heard that, that was it. You're out the door. I want to help mankind. And I wanted to prove I wanted to help mankind. So in 1999, we went ahead and gave away the small plans. And it took off. It gave me great pleasure last night to be on CBS News locally. And we were on all the way from Florida to California. I got calls from them and Fox people saying they saw me on the news. It was the first time in 30 years that I was put on television where it didn't say crazy inventor at the bottom or crazy invention. It was a serious report. They said, here is Mr. Pantone, inventor, and if you go to our website, we're going to lead you to his website because CBS wants you to know this is real. Fox wants you to know this is real, and we're going to keep it on our website. So, the part that breaks my heart, though, is now I'm certified crazy and they won't say it. No. Steve does have the plans. I'm going to walk you through the plans that he has. There's a lot more information in the plans that I'm saying right now. I will be answering questions for you. I want you to understand the basic technology of the small engine of GEET, and then I'll go into the biggest detailed changes between this and a large car engine. I'm not going to be going into the furnace application or jet engines or anything else today, but there are as many applications for GEET as there are pieces of equipment on the planet. So when people, after hearing that, send me email after email, will it fit my 350 Chevy? Or how about my Honda? Every piece of equipment on the planet, there are no exceptions. If it uses fuel, it can be efficient using the system. It can be a solid, coal, wood, tires, or it can be any liquid. We don't encourage anyone to run out and build a unit to run on pickle juice. It'll create a shortage of pickle juice. The price will go up. And don't use Pepsi or Coke or Mountain Dew. We had two of the directors for the Coca-Cola company show up in California at one of the conferences, and here we are running it on Coke and Mountain Dew and everything, and they're talking to each other going, do you know how cheap we could run our trucks down the road? I mean, we make that stuff for 2 cents a gallon. I said, whoa, 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 wait, what do you mean 2 cents a gallon? Is that what that soda costs? Yep. Now, how come when I go to the store to get one, it costs me 75 cents? Well, we got to support all the sports and other programs we're into. This is what the government's allowed, and they think it's fair, so we can charge whatever they say is fair. Well, water now costs more than gas and soda pops, so I guess it's what the traffic will bear. When I gave away the small plans on the internet, I'd ask people any donation you could make would really be appreciated. And during that 10 years, there was one donation for $5, another one for $100, and a few others trickled in. But I don't think the total even came to $1,000. What did I get more than that? Complaints. How come that's all you gave us? Well, we gave away the big auto plans on the internet the other night, 1.8 million hits, and what do I get out of the first day's 750 emails I get to respond to? I don't want those. I want the water plans. I don't want to have the free plans. I want a kit. I don't want to build it myself. Can't you build it for me? Can I bring my car to you? So no matter what I've given out, they always come back with, I don't want that. So they're going to have to get used to it. We only give out certain amounts of knowledge at a time. It's to get it out to everybody so it can't be boxed up. And a lot of people don't think that there's really that much boxing up of technology. But if you really want a good example, go to an antique store and see if they have an old encyclopedia set sitting there, Britannica, any of them. And get one from the 1955, 56 era and open it up. Nikola Tesla, almost a half-inch thick. Now, 2 paragraphs. We want to forget all the rest of the good stuff he did. If you look in there for the American Society vacuum technology, scientists from around the world that were forming these clubs on vacuum technology, which is what GEET's all about, there were about 25 to 30 pages, depending on which encyclopedia. If you look up the American Vacuum Society today, probably won't fill up a half a page. In universities, there used to be books in the 50s on vacuum technology. Now you go into the universities and say, I'd like to get any book you have on vacuums. They say, vacuum tubes or vacuum cleaners? That's it. They don't want to talk about vacuum. The minute you put energy into a vacuum, you magnify the energy. There's a gentleman in here with a coil. If you took that coil today and you put it into a box and pulled a vacuum on it, you're going to magnify that 20 to 50 times. I haven't told him that yet, so somebody can tell him. We want to help all the other inventors out there. And during the last few days, a lot of the inventors were talking to people, and I didn't want to be rude and butt in or interrupt their conversations. So I zipped my lips, and somebody here caught me doing it, smiling every time I heard something that I thought was a little incorrect or I had the answer to, so I just said, okay. Well, she and her friend brought it to my attention. What was it this time? Well, it was one of the 42 of the old pictures that I have in the book over here, that they understand this part and this part, but they're missing a part here. And I'm not hiding it. Here's the picture. They just have to come over and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. How does that tie to what you're doing? Well, they all tie together. When you start talking about the healing energy, electro fields, they're all in the same ballpark. With my unit, instead of categorizing it as a Paul Pantone field or a GEET field here, what we've done is we're saying there's 7 unidentified fields of energy. I don't need to title them. It doesn't have to have my name on it. It doesn't have to have anybody's name on it. It's just unidentified for right now. Until we can sit down with you and you and you and say, here's what we have. Yours is identical. This is what we've discovered. On one of them, if you were to take the laser pointer and be running it along the center of the exhaust pipe, as you're running it along the center of the exhaust pipe, when you get to the dead center, the temperature, according to everything we knew, up until a year and a half, well, about 4 years ago, everything we knew said, when you get to the center, it'll show a 200 to 500 degree jump in temperature. I've got people in this audience that have done that. They know that test. All of a sudden, and it was Dr. Paul Mahler who called me on it, because he was testing it on his rotary engines for his Sky Car, and he called up and he said, Paul, we got a problem here. We've got the world's best heat sensors fixed to the exhaust pipe, and there is no temperature spike. I said, you got to be doing something wrong. There's a spike there in the middle. So they redid it and redid it. I sent a technician out from Salt Lake to Sacramento, came back and said, Paul, there isn't a spike. I said, go to the store and buy another one of those Rayovac pyrometers, handheld, and go check it. He goes out there and he checks it and he calls me back going, well, according to that machine that we use, there's a spike. According to what he's using, there isn't a spike. So the only conclusion I can come up with is whatever is going from that light to here and back to that light, part of that energy is being pulled in to the reactor. And because of that, we're getting a false reading on that gun. Does it invalidate what we did? No. It only means now we've got a lot more testing to do to find out what is happening. Is the beam being pulled in, or is something else coming out at that point? Every time we've had someone come up with a question that we don't have the answer to, it might open the door to 5 more discoveries. So at this point, I'm up to 175 discoveries I need to get into my shop and start replicating. If I'm on the road, I'm doing tours, or I'm teaching, I'm not going to have the time to do that. I have tried to teach people from all over the world different levels of the technology. Some of the people I've taught I limited what I was teaching them to just how that engine runs or just how this occurs. Now, I have some dealers coming in and students coming in that are going to learn it from top to bottom. But they're not going to go back and teach their 2 to 4 people working under them, if they're dealers, how to put this on every piece of equipment, or you're going to lose an employee the first day. The minute he knows how to put it on everything, what does he need you for? But if you take that employee and you say, this is what I want you to do, you're going to bend this, you're going to put this through here, and that's it, let me know when you're done. Then you come back and you slip the special rod in. You don't want that employee to know much more than that, because the minute you do, he's going out the back door to the neighbor's house saying, yeah, I can put one on your tractor tonight at 5 o'clock. You're going to want to protect your business and your investment. We want to get this out, but we also would all like to make a living. There were times while I was building this in the last 30 years where I was lucky to make $8,000 in a year. Wasn't quite enough to really live on, so I had to go back to carpentry and other things. It's also gotten to the point now where I couldn't do all the shows if I wanted to. I mean, I left here last night at about 9:30, 9:45, went back to my room, and I was so tired. I said, all I want to do is lay down. And you can ask my brother Rocky. We had just got the TV on, phone rang. Can you do a 2-hour radio show down here in Florida? Well, sure, when? Right now. You're on in 4 minutes. So, at midnight, I finally hung the phone up and went to bed. I have trouble sleeping, so immediately my alarm clock at 6 this morning said, it's time to wake up. I have not had to use an alarm clock in years. If I know I need to get up for something, I'm up. So, I was up, ready to go again this morning, and my legs are saying, oh, no, 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 no. Can't we sleep in? Doing what I do with the technology is great, but it doesn't do me any good or you any good if there aren't people out there in my place building them in your community. I'm looking for the people that want to do that. Some of them are in this room right now. Others, if you don't want to build it but you want one installed, send me an email. Let me know what you want it on. So as we have dealers in your area, we can put the 2 of you together. We do not want any commercialization of this on any new equipment. So none of the dealers are going to be licensed to put it on new equipment in this country. I have been told for 30 years, no, we're not interested. No, we don't want it. No, we don't want you. So let's take it abroad where they've told me to take it over and over and over. We'll take it abroad. We'll take it to Africa, Europe, all over. And let them start building it. Let them have a chance to have their clean air as we start importing it, unless you go to a local dealer and have them install it. I'd love to have worked here first. I really believed in waving that American flag, and I get very offended when I see it with a gold fringe. But I don't know why that one's in here, but it is. Maybe for another meeting. But I want to see the American people get the strength they had. And to me, GEET means freedom. And I believe that's the reason I got put away. Before we start going into all the pictures and all, if we turn the lights up a little bit so I can see, and let's ask questions. Can we get a little bit of lights? Oh, did I ask at the wrong time? Okay. Are there any questions right now?
Right here.
Okay, I can't see, so.
When you said new equipment, what do you mean by new versus not new?
Oh, as far as a commercial license?
Repeat the question.
Wait for the mic.
Okay. Why don't you come on up to the front so we can, or pass him the mic, that's fine. I just can't see.
Yeah. All right. It's right there. Yeah. Okay. Is when you said that you won't be licensing dealers to put it on new equipment, and is there a specific year of cutoff, or what exactly is new versus old in your definition here?
My definition of new equipment is it came from GM, Ford, and Chrysler, and it's on their lot. The minute you drive it off their lot and go across the street, it's used equipment. So I do not look forward to working with GM, Ford, Chrysler, or any major U.S. corporation that promises a contract to tie up the technology. It isn't going to happen. Any other questions? Sorry, I just can't see.
Hey, Paul.
Yes.
I was telling you a little bit about HHO earlier. Now, the new fancy cars with all those computers on there, will it, can we put the GEET on those with all the computers, or do we need to modify the computerization a little bit to make it work?
Good question, Neil. The computers in the cars are set up to detect the amount of oxygen coming out of the tailpipe, certain temperature ranges. They're all set up a little bit different. The problems we had in the past with the computers is if you are getting a good clean burn of zero pollution and you're not getting enough pollution out that tailpipe, on the Ford trucks we put it on, it would not allow it to shift into gear, the lights wouldn't work, the dashboard quit working. The engine would run and that's it. The computer told it it couldn't work. So even though we tried to bypass the computer, it has been nothing but headaches. I've never had the right people working with me that could make a good computer change. A lot of people who have done the computer changes, they said it was a piece of cake to them. I have enough trouble learning how to send an email, so I'm not going to try it. If somebody working with me can help to bypass it, fantastic. But right now there's enough equipment out there that uses gasoline, diesel, kerosene to heat your home, cut your lawns. There's enough equipment out there to start getting people going on it, to get some big corporations that have electronic equipment, or like yourself, since you do know computers and programs, it's going to be people like you that come forward and say, hey, I've got the controller for you guys. Let's get this out to the people.
I was interested from the talk the other night, if you could maybe hit it when you do your presentation, but what's the minimum hot and cold differential that you have to have for the plasma to occur? And then if the engine runs totally cold, what causes that differential after the heat is gone?
Question right now. Yeah.
Hello, Paul.
Okay. I have one question I'm answering first. As far as the temperature differential required to create plasma, it depends on the amount of vacuum. When you first start an engine up, if you've completely shut off the air intake and you're pulling all air and fuel through that reactor tube, you can hit, if all of your joints are sealed, you can hit up to about a 24-inch vacuum, which means you only need about a 10-degree temperature differential, which normally means one revolution of that engine, a spark coming through it, will give you just enough heat that you get a startup. So normally on the first revolution of the engine, it is started.
This is for a different kind of shooting.
The other way, please.
That's why I didn't hit it, boss.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh. Yes. Can we get a little more audience light? Yes. Oh, Lord. Go ahead.
You're done? You said I could ask you this question in this group. And the question is, if you accelerate the speed of your exhaust, at the same time accelerating the speed of the GEET gas going into the engine, will that increase the efficiency of the production of GEET gas?
Yes. Since it is an electrical discharge, the faster you have hot and cold moving in the opposite direction, the more electrical discharge you're going to get. When you restrict the flow down to 30/2 of an inch in each direction for the exhaust going one way and the fuel going the other way, you are getting a maximum heat exchange. You're going to be creating more fuel than the engine or furnace can use. We have had many engines where we have achieved 3 and 4 times the RPM that the manufacturer says can be done. And on the little lawnmower engines like these, when you modify these so that you can get that 3 to 4 times the RPM out of the engine, you better be holding on to whatever it is you're doing. We've had people on riding lawnmowers where the riding lawnmowers have done wheelies and dumped them. So if you want that knowledge and you bought the plans, give me an email, tell me what you'd like to accomplish, and I'll tell you how to do it. Yes?
You, Bill Hodges, you said on your presentation the other day that there was an electron deficiency in the vicinity of your engine. What did you measure it with?
The electron detectors that were used by Florida State University said they saw a specific pattern of movement of the electrons as far away as 60 feet. Now that particular model they were testing, the rod was horizontal. They were only drawing from 180 degrees. Had they raised it up, they would have drawn from 360 degrees, and they would have seen an entirely different field. We had not discussed that with them. They didn't know that was possible.
But you don't know what the equipment was.
No, I don't. Okay. We can go for about another 20 minutes before we take a break. Is that all right? Another 20 to 30 minutes before we take a break, and then we'll come back and keep right on going. Hold on. We're going to jump right now, as soon as he's done, into those pictures. We're going to go ahead and hit the pictures. Starting at the back of the book this time, working forward.
How do you determine the size of the reactor in relation to the size of the engine?
Ah, that's a really good question. First, I'll tell you how not to do it, because that's what I was trying to do when I first invented it.
I think I did that already.
We're all a member of the same club on that one, but I'll go ahead and explain it. I took a small engine, had a piston about 1.25 inches. I'm now going to put it on this engine, so the reactor rod must be this much bigger. Then I decided we're going to put it on this great big diesel that's 13 feet long, 7 feet wide. It's about that tall with 7.5-inch pistons. That means that reactor's got to be 22 feet long if it's all in proportion. Took 4 of us to lift the exhaust pipe up and put it into place, and we had big legs under it. We fired that baby up on that diesel, and we had fire trucks rolling from 3 communities. The cloud of black smoke that poured out of there, I mean, we were making so much fuel, but it was recombining. And the fuel went through, horrible mess, and we shut it down as quickly as we could, but the amount of smoke coming out of it was worse than any diesel I'd ever seen. We started over and made it shorter and shorter and shorter. It took us $94,000 or $95,000 before we finally figured out that if it's a 7-inch rod for gasoline in that engine, it's a 7-inch rod on the biggest engine you can find. I don't care if you're talking a Wärtsilä 122-foot long engine, it's a V32, it's going to be the same exact size rod as if it's a little tiny 1-horsepower engine. If you're looking at gasoline, it has one length. If you're looking at diesel, it has a different length. And it doesn't matter if it's 1 cylinder or 32 cylinders. You only have to calculate out 1 cylinder at a time, and they'll all work off that formula. So the length and diameter is the only, the diameter is the only thing you have to change between a small engine and a big one. I don't want to get feedback right now, but let's try this. Okay, we're fine. Now, this is about a 1/2 inch, 7/16 rod. This will get you through everything from a little tiny engine up to about a 302. That's all that you need for a rod size and diameter. Now, if you're looking at running on a semi, you're going to be at about this size in diameter, about 1 inch, 1.1 inches. So there isn't a lot of difference between the smallest engine and the biggest engine. I wouldn't put that on the, oh well, okay, let's try it. I was going to pass them around or have them up here where they can look at them later. So the diameter is so minutely different that you can get away with a 1/4-inch rod or a 3/8 inch rod all the way up into a V8. Once you get to the 302, 327, you can get away with a 3/4-inch rod all the way up to a 454. When you get above the 500 range, you want to go to the bigger one, which is good all the way through almost all the semis. Now, the same rod we use on the semis is the same one we use on that great big V8 with 7.5-inch pistons. And it only takes the one rod. It only makes enough fuel of whatever the engine is pulling. It makes exactly the right amount of fuel. There is no excess, there's no waste, and no storage. Yes?
This question is indirectly related to the GEET technology, and that is, since the GEET is one way for us to try and diffuse the influence of Big Brother on our lives, as long as we're dealing with computers and cars and small planes, my understanding is that they can be shut down from a remote source. And so to the group in general, perhaps someone might know the technology to remove that chip from the computer, so we do have a little more freedom as well.
Yes, I would agree with that 100%. As I toured this country, we met with a lot of people that worked for different agencies, which we won't go into. And they explained to us how those little antennas work beside the freeway and why they work. And it was kind of shocking when they said the ones with the 3- and 4-sided towers that have a flat top, the part that goes on top of that flat top isn't too far away. They're brought in by a helicopter, and there's a few pins on top of that tower, and they just set down, and they now have a guard station. Whoa, okay? And at every peak of every major intersection, where you've got a long distance that they can see, they always take that vantage point. But they'll build this huge tower with a 30-foot or 40-foot platform on top for one little tiny antenna. Right. That's what it's all for, one little tiny antenna. Yet the ones by the freeway, which are dish-shaped, cup-shaped, coming down, we had one gentleman during our radio broadcast on Christian Broadcasting on Sunday morning. He called into the Paul and Molly show and he said, I have a tape recording I'd like to play for you and your wife because I called the Department of Transportation here in Dallas and asked them what these antennas are. They just put up my backyard, and they said they're traffic control antennas. When activated, they will shut down any car that has a computer from going past that location. So if you have a computerized car, enjoy it. But if those are activated and that car is shut down, you're not going any further. Now, if you got a GEET-powered car behind it and all the traffic lanes are already blocked, you're still not going to get through. So there are a lot of areas where people have told me these things are there. We've gone out, we've seen them, we've heard the tape recordings from the offices. Later, you call back to ask for the same person that was on the tape. I'm sorry, they don't work here anymore. They overstepped their authority when they told you something. No, we're really not doing that. Yet, when we talked to the guys installing these satellites for cell phones, and we said, well, you know what's really funny? I get underneath these things that are a mile away, that they don't seem to work. If there's all these antennas here and none of them work, what are they for? Some of the guys will tell you it's traffic control and that's it. The main place you find them is next to intersections. So once we validated that that seems to be the popular place to put them, we decided to start taking pictures. And somebody broke into our room while we were touring the country, and we had about 80 rolls of film walk off. We didn't have digital during that part of our journey. All of the pictures we had of the UN tanks that were brought in and the other beautiful white buses and white army vehicles that were being transported at night when we were driving, we kept taking pictures. But all that footage disappeared too, and that happened over there in Denver. One of the gentlemen in Denver was telling us that they've been working on a device that'll shut down not just the electronic controlled cars, but if you got a battery, it stops it right there. It drains the battery. And he said he drove through the back of the base over there. I can't think, what base is that there in just above Colorado Springs. But they've got this big ball out there. And he said he drove by that and he got a little too close and battery and everything went dead, lights went off, no power whatsoever. And he pushed it, and finally when he got far enough away from it, the battery started coming back up, he had power again. But there are ways of generating electrical fields that will kill all the electrical items in that area, including your watch, pacemaker, whatever you happen to have. It's not good. If you do have a GEET, you don't need a spark. Because once the GEET is running, you can go out and pull all the spark plug wires off. If you're getting a good, clean burn, you do not need a dynamo, you don't need a spark plug, you don't need the cables on it. We made that mistake when we had Fox News come out and we converted that great big diesel. We thought that the diesel had to be converted to a gasoline type system, propane or natural gas system. We went through the expense of changing everything on it. The injectors had spark plugs, and my brother-in-law forgot to hook up the spark plug wires to the magneto. Oh, it was funny, yeah, real funny. I went out there, Fox News was filming it, and we ran it and ran it and ran it, and we kept checking the temperature with a heat gun we had, going up to the side of the block, and we kept waiting for the temperature to get up higher. And finally, it went up 1 degree. And my technician said, well, did it go up 1 degree because of the engine heat, or is it because the sun is hitting this side of the dark blue paint now? It was a dark blue paint. Went back the next day and checked it without the engine running. There was no heat from the engine. But when Fox was there filming it, they finished filming it, put the camera away, and the cameraman said, the reason he's a cameraman now, instead of being a mechanic like he was, he hurt his back. He said, is there a reason that you'd go through all the cost of putting a magneto on there, all those coils and all those spark plugs, and not hook up the wires? And I looked over there, I just wanted to scream. All that money down the drain, I didn't have to spend a penny on it. Just put the little tiny reactor up there. We've got some pictures of that reactor in here where when we were running it, we had ice form on the exhaust pipe. And we're talking a day that was about 85 degrees. When you're getting these phenomenon, they need to be studied more. Somebody had asked earlier, we're not going to go into a lot of details on the furnace, but he was asking if the GEET could be built as a furnace. Well, yes, it can. But when the GEET is running cold and giving off heat at the top, it pulls cold energy into the bottom. So even on a 100-degree day, you're going to have solid ice on the bottom of your chimney. So if you're going to be creating an electrical field around it, you might just as well tap into it. If you're creating ice on the bottom, why not use it? So even if you're down in Honduras and you just want air conditioning, put one of the furnaces in the backyard, just let the thing pump the heat right up into the atmosphere if you need, so you can have the air conditioning off the bottom. It's a natural heat pump. GEET, the way we use it today in the small engines, this is the worst model we ever built that works. The free plans were to prove it could be done. Nobody could challenge it. It worked. But to what level did it work? Well, we didn't tell people that. We just said, try it yourself and see if it works. It got the word out worldwide that the technology works. And now, 2 days ago when I was up here, I was explaining, and let's hit the pictures now. Some of the rods we told people to build, we told them to put tips on them. The tips would help you stop from getting up to the advantage point we had. But it worked. We had discovered that there was an auric field around it. Just the same type field that you'd have if you took a plant and you cut part of the leaf off and you did a Kirlian photography film, you're still going to have the aura where the plant was. If you took a person and cut their hand off and you take a picture, Kirlian photography, they'll still have that hand in the film. They'll still have that energy, but it will not be a beautiful blue. It's going to be orange or red. It's unhealthy in this area. It realizes there's something wrong. Your electrical field, and there was something on the radio just a couple days ago that scientists now believe that the body is emitting some form of light. Yeah? Okay. I wonder who got paid to do that study. Well, when you go to those same people and tell them, well, this unit has that same field. But now we get really tricky because we are calling it an aura. We got in trouble for that. Not big trouble, but people kept saying it can't be an aura because an aura is the surrounding energy field of a human or living tissue. And a steel rod or a glass rod or an aluminum rod can't have an aura. So we decided we'll call that an auric field. It's an aura-like field. That makes the scientists who've heard about it smile and say, we can live with that. I normally don't like putting titles on something because maybe there's a better title. Maybe somewhere in the writings of Einstein or Faraday or someone, maybe they discovered something like this somewhere else that we haven't picked up and put two and two together. Could this be similar to a corona field around the sun or the moon or something? It could be. But until we determine that, this is the best we could come up with. Because the corona around the moon and the sun and all, those are always the same. This changes color. The next picture.
That's a good title.
It's the only one I could come up with that would make everybody happy at the time. Oh, oh, okay.
Backward. You already gone?
Oh. Oh. All of these pictures are outdated and obsolete. The new pictures are being prepared right now for the first class over in Oklahoma City. The new pictures are not being shown to the public probably for at least 6 more months to a year. We have to wait until we get all the copyright protection and everything else because of the number of new discoveries and how they tie to different things in your daily life. I'm going to be going over a lot of the details on some of those things today, but not all of them. Back when this picture was done originally, this shows a nice rounded tip. We found that coming out approximately 1/2 whatever the diameter is from here to here, go from here and come out half that distance, and then go back at about a 37-degree angle was the most efficient. We're doing some testing right now to find out exactly what is the most efficient. We stumbled onto some of this because we didn't know any better, we just cut it. Now the reason we came up with a round end to begin with is back in 1996, we shipped out 30 to 50 engines a month. Set up, ready to go, generators. The people that were buying them were using them for their home power units, backup units and solar systems, camping. About 1/3 of them that we sent out in the first 2 months got returned. People said they didn't work right. Well, I guarantee my work, so I told them to ship it back, I'll pay the shipping. We got them back, tried to start them up, and they just wouldn't run right. The pollution level wasn't that low. We couldn't figure out what was going on. Finally, we went out there, we had about 15 of them lined up in front of the house. Couldn't figure out what was wrong with them. We opened a couple of them up and pulled the rods out. Well, the rods were flat at both ends, and we didn't know about the north and south at that point. We just knew that they weren't working. We put in a brand new rod, fired it up, worked perfect. And we thought about it a little bit. Well, why don't we round one end of it, or shape one end with a point and stick it in, so that we know that this is where the air goes in. Because maybe people are turning them around. Because we did find that if you took the rod out and just turned it around, put it back in, efficiency went down back to normal. Didn't want to run right. So the rod was doing something, but how and why we didn't understand. Then when we got more discovery under our belt, we found out that the shape does help us a little bit. And then one day we recognized, because I had the engine sitting in the shop on a bench, had it hooked to an analyzer, the engine was running, we were trying to see how many kilowatts of energy per gallon of fuel and doing all the calculations, and one of the kids working for me said, I need to use this end of the bench where the power outlets are. I said, sure, no problem. I'm in the middle of a test, but rather than make you wait, I'll just move the engine to the other side of the table. And as I started grabbing the generator to move it, I looked up at my meter, and I see the numbers going way up. Wait a minute. The direction the engine sits is what, for all these years, that's why it pollutes one day and doesn't the next? So I'm sitting here playing with it back and forth. He said, well, I need to drill this. I said, get out of here. We went and got a furniture dolly, put it underneath, and we just sat there playing with back and forth, and we finally found that when that engine sits right here, it runs perfect. When we turn it around the other way, it doesn't. But what does that mean? We still haven't put it together that there's a north and a south anywhere. All we know is that when you turn the engine this way, it works better than if you turn it this way. It took me 3 days staring at that thing and running that thing and turning it back and forth before I finally figured out there's a north and a south. We had all these generators sitting around in the room. Fired them up. The one thing they all had in common was when that rod was pointed magnetic north, they were most efficient. So from 1979 to 1996, we didn't have a clue as to why it worked. People said, well, what, this magnetic north thing, does it have to be pointed north? Only when you're breaking it in for maximum efficiency and to get a signature on it so you know exactly how long it's supposed to be. That took us a few more years. So when people got these original plans and the ones that Steve was selling, that was the best we had available that we could really say we understood. We were still working on trying to understand all this phenomenon, but until you come to grips with why things happen. Now, I could turn all of you loose with a set of plans on this and say, here's how you build it with exact details. But if you don't have that 30 years of experience that I beat my head up with, why is it happening? You can't imagine the frustration. The first times I ran my first engines down at the city smog shop in Sacramento, California, I unloaded that engine, put crude oil in it, fired it up, zero pollution. 2% more oxygen coming out than there is in the air in the room. I took it across the street for a demonstration there, fired it up. How come I'm not getting the same readings? I went back to the first shop and said, hey, let's try it again. I had it in a different position. I got a totally different reading. Why? We just ran it right here. Now, instead of getting 2% more oxygen, we're getting 2% less oxygen than the room has. It's still really good. I mean, 19% oxygen is nothing to yell at. But it wasn't zero. I wasn't getting the extra oxygen. And I didn't have a clue as to why. I took the same engine, loaded it in my car, drove home. On the way home, I stopped at Texaco, pulled it out, and I said, you want to see zero pollution? The guy said, yeah. Well, I've known Dennis for years. I unload the thing, we start it up. I've got 40 parts per million hydrocarbon coming out the tailpipe. That's horrible. I'm almost in tears. And he's over there checking it on a car and another car. And he's having trouble. Can we turn those down just a little? Or? Oh. So the camera can see. Oh, I'm sorry. I stepped out of the light. Oh, I thought you were trying to blind me. But we're trying to figure out why. I'm depressed. I'm really hurt because it was cleaner just an hour ago. Didn't have a clue why. I loaded it up in the back of my car. A few minutes later, some of his friends showed up that he had called. They said, oh, come on, unload it. We got to see it. So I unloaded again in a different direction, started up, and zero pollution, 22% oxygen. What did I do different? Nothing. So you want frustration? You can't do the same thing twice because you don't know what you're doing. It was really frustrating. Didn't have a clue, though, that it had anything to do with direction. I was thinking maybe it's the humidity in the air or something. The elevation I'm at, that has to be it. I kept trying to figure out what variable changed. But then I'm thinking, no, it can't be the elevation. We just tried to run it there a minute ago. We moved it to there and back to there, and now it's working. So the discoveries we made, some are so subtle that it would take a lifetime of research to find them. When we were running our engines in that shop and we made that discovery of what north was, I decided to test them magnetically north and get all the results we could. So we began a whole new series of test sheets. And we started testing day after day after day, starting from 12 o'clock on, 8 ounces of fuel on each test, and documenting everything out, writing it all down on our little charts. Boy, we had it all. And then we sat there and tried to compare it, going, how come on Monday it ran up here, and Tuesday was up here, and Wednesday was a little higher. And then it dropped back off and went the other way for a few days. And then it went back up again for a few days. We're using the same gas out of the same can, measuring it with the same glass containers, and it's consistently doing this. Not one engine, 5 engines. It's not making any sense. And this one day I'm up in my office. I just finished a radio show and I looked up ahead of me and here's this calendar on the wall. And the calendar's got new moon, quarter moon. Wait a minute. Off the wall it came. I ran out in the back, down on the table. I get all my notes out and I'm marking them day by day. And sure as heck, new moon, best run. Full moon, worst run. So what can affect the running of an engine if it's plasma? Just about anything. Humidity? Yeah. In the second half, we'll be showing you a little about humidity and how it can affect a GEET reactor. It's very entertaining. But we had to go through all of these lessons. When we gave away the small engine plans on the internet and we turned thousands of people all over the world loose with it, we received about 25,000 emails in the first year, year and a half, from people all over the world that were building them and being successful with them and sharing their discoveries with us. Saying, hey, how come this is happening on a glass rod and it's not happening on the aluminum rod? How come when it's biblical north instead of magnetic north that it works in all directions? Well, most people wouldn't realize what biblical north was. It was one of our biggie breakthroughs in this technology. But if you look in the Bible, you'll find that Ezekiel spoke about the chariot that came from the north. And Isaiah talked about the north. And even Moses looked up to the north to get his instructions. Throughout the Bible they refer to the north, but they didn't have compasses and they didn't really know where the North Pole was, so we finally figured out that up is north. And when that reactor is pointed up, it draws energy from 360 degrees and the efficiency goes through the roof. We're going to go ahead and take a 15, 20-minute break. If you have any questions, we'll start it out with questions.